What happens when the nation's top cop faces accusations of failing the very people he's sworn to protect? Today, Representative Jasmine Crockett didn't hold back, calling out FBI Director Kash Patel to his face over what she sees as political games, mishandled cases, and a dangerous blind spot on white supremacy. This clash raises a critical question: can the FBI still be trusted to protect all Americans?
Texas is recognized.
Man, oh man, there has been so much today, and I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that
That's
you are
false.
the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I
Still
want to go
false.
through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people. And even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody. And then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there, even though he literally confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for the apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're gonna do anything about the white supremacy problem. The one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I mean, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's a pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country. And we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When Representative Jasmine Crockett spoke, she wasn't simply criticizing Kash Patel. She was shining a light on something much bigger, the question of whether the FBI, under his leadership, can be trusted to protect all Americans fairly. Her frustration came through not just in tone, but in substance. She reminded everyone that Patel is the first FBI director in history who never served inside the Bureau itself. And while his defenders point to his experience across other parts of government, Crockett argued that nothing substitutes for years of first-hand FBI service when it comes to leading the nation's top law enforcement agency. To her, Patel didn't just walk into the role, he skipped the line, and in doing so, left the Bureau less prepared, less credible, and more politicized. But what made her remarks so cutting is how she tied Patel's leadership to real-world consequences. She brought up death threats against lawmakers, even attempts on their lives. She pointed to Republicans and Democrats alike who were targeted simply for casting votes their base didn't like. These weren't hypotheticals or partisan jabs. They were examples of how political violence has become a disturbing norm in America. Crockett's message was clear. When threats like these rise, the FBI should be front and center, investigating, prosecuting, and protecting. Yet under Patel, she said, confidence is fading. And then came the issue of white supremacy. Crockett made it personal, speaking as a black woman who sees and feels the growing dangers of extremist violence. She asked why Patel struggles to name the threat plainly, even when the data and cases are overwhelming. Because let's be honest, the FBI has publicly identified domestic extremism as the nation's top terrorism threat in the past. Yet Crockett suggests Patel is downplaying it, either to avoid angering political allies or to protect his own position. That raises a haunting question. Is the FBI fighting terrorism or filtering it through politics first? Her criticism of the Kirk killing probe hit the same theme. Patel had celebrated the arrest, but Crockett argued the FBI's role was less victory than accident, with parents, not the Bureau, making the decisive move to turn in their own child. For her, that symbolized a broader failure, an FBI that reacts, postures, and spins rather than prevents and protects. And when she spoke about HBCUs being targeted by domestic terrorism, her anger was justified. Imagine being a student, parent, or teacher and hearing about bomb threats at historically black colleges, only to hear silence or delay from the FBI. To Crockett, this wasn't just negligence, it was a betrayal. Communities already vulnerable to violence and discrimination were left questioning if they mattered at all to federal law enforcement. At the core of her speech is a larger issue, the politicization of the FBI. Crockett believes Patel isn't running the Bureau for the American people, but for the political interests of those who appointed him. And if that's true, the stakes couldn't be higher. Because when the nation's most powerful investigative agency bends to politics, it doesn't just fail its mission, it risks eroding the very foundation of justice and democracy. This is why exchanges like this matter. They aren't just about fiery rhetoric or partisan fights, they're about whether citizens can trust the institutions meant to keep them safe. Crockett wasn't simply criticizing Patel, she was asking a fundamental question. Who is the FBI really protecting? And until that question is answered with action, not just words, confidence in the Bureau will remain shaken. So here's what I'll ask you. Do you think Crockett's criticism is justified, or do you believe Patel's record shows progress despite the criticism? Share your thoughts, because accountability doesn't just happen in hearing rooms, it happens when the public demands it. So here's what I'll ask you. Do you think Crockett's criticism is justified, or do you believe Patel's record shows progress despite the criticism? Share your thoughts, because accountability doesn't just happen in hearing rooms, it happens when the public demands it.